Well, I sure am late to the party. Hello ARCs, and welcome back to Kathy yapping about the story again. Today, I'm gonna talk about Chapter 7. It's been 4 months, and I'm slowly starting to believe that we might truly not get any story updates until February, so I replayed Chapter 7 again to refresh my memory of it. There is a lot to talk about, far more than you might realize. First, let's recap the story really quickly. The chapter starts out by receiving a message from Zephetto, who transferred his consciousness into Faria. He tells us to meet him over in the newly discovered Nameless city, which we gained access to while exploring Lesiel. Zephetto only wants the main trio and Faria to come, which is a bit odd. Once we arrive, we are immediately taken aback by the scenery. Not only is this city far larger than Central City, but it's also not located on Halpha, it's actually in space. This is a cute mirror reference to the first Phantasy Star Online. In that game, the base of operations is the spaceship Pioneer 2, and each mission sends us down onto the planet Raggle, where we investigate what happened to the residents of the first spaceship, Pioneer 1. In NGS, our base of operations is on the planet, and we investigate the space station above us. Anyway, if you completed the story of PSO2 Classic, you will receive a third dialogue option showing you a flashback of Matoy when looking at the weird Clarissa-looking structure. Interestingly enough, it is a flashback of Matoy from episode 5. At this point in time, she no longer had the design of Clarissa that resembles this structure. I believe this is deliberate to make sure we are thinking of Matoy and not Clarissa. If you're familiar with the lore, you know why that distinction is important. We battle our way through hordes of enemies, and Faria shares a little bit of knowledge with us. Formers are tames that were genetically modified and mutated, gaining special abilities in the process. If you're familiar with formers, you know that they become stronger during the night. They also only drop the Alts Secreta augment if they're killed in that powered up state. For the longest time I wondered why that is, and there are clues that might hint towards the reason for it. Have you noticed that Dark Falls never attack during the day? The first time we saw Dark Falls, he attacked during the night. His urgent quest starts during the day, but he immediately takes us into his pocket dimension, and by the time we break out, the sun is already setting. Dark Falls Aegis, Dark Falls Solus, and Dark Falls Dalion all attack during the night. Naturally, all of them have a weakness to the light element, and if you look around during the final phase of these fights, when they're in their weakest state, you can see light seep through from the outside. While I don't know if it's enough to draw a definitive conclusion, I believe altars may have been Zepheto's way of providing stronger enemies to train against during the night, where Starless feel comfortable enough to dispatch their Dark Falls class units. Next up are the ruinous enemies. In order to bring arcs back to their glory days, Zephetto figured that reviving their old enemies might do the trick. Though apparently they couldn't restore Falls spawn fully, which is interesting. It also begs the question how exactly they acquired the Masquerade genome. Unless, recording it for 999 deaths is enough to create a near-perfect replica. Anyway, after reaching the research district, we can hear the Song of Morning playing in the background. Apparently, it plays in Lesiel too, and serves as a memento of all the people who died to the first Starless invasion. If you listen closely to the music, you'll also recognize the Raytem Al-Node leitmotif, suggesting a closer tie between the two. In general, we get a lot of answers during this chapter, but for every question answered we receive 2 new ones. Once we reunite with Zephetto, we receive more information. Apparently Resurgent Arcs started out with just 100,000 members. When they injected the Arcs genome into themselves, about half of them perished, and the other half began fighting amongst each other until only roughly 10,000 members remained. These remaining Arcs then began developing Halpha, and the rest was explained in Chapter 5. Though, one thing explained in Chapter 5 seems to have been wrong. It seems that our 909 isn't truly 909. It's heavily implied that our playable character might be the original from classic PSO2, and to be honest, the flashback kind of confirms it in my opinion. Which begs the question, why were we put into cold sleep? The only other 2 instances we know of where characters are put into cold sleep are when Matoy and the Guardian, which is how I will be referring to 909 moving forward, needed to be purified from the F-Factor after the events of Episode 3. And during Phantasy Star Nova, a PSO2 spin-off, cold sleep is used to put passengers of an ARC ship to sleep when traveling far distances that may take a long time. It is said that the chamber, in which the Guardian resides, was locked with such a high security level that no one could ever open the pod. But it was opened. During the prologue, someone opened our chamber and sent us down to Halpha. Who could have a high enough level of authority to open the Guardian's cold sleep pod? Personally, I believe there are only 3 possible candidates. Either it's Xiao, Matoi, or a new character we haven't seen before. We then continue deeper into the facility, where Zephedo reveals the 4th clone. This is Zephedo's new body, since it appears his old body was destroyed at the end of Chapter 5. This one is supposedly robust enough to take on the leader of Starless. Finally, Zephedo will be able to join our ranks, and lead the charge, except he won't. You see, Zephedo might be named after Geppetto, but he was a puppet himself all along. Dark Fall's veil has been subconsciously living inside Zephedo's head, likely influencing him to do his bidding. Zephedo can regain control of the body for a brief moment, and allows us to escape, sending Veil into space-time. Once we arrive back on Halpha, we have one last conversation with Zephedo telling us what he learned from his fusion with Veil, accepting his defeat, and Ina forgiving him. His face isn't very emotive, but I can imagine her words meant a lot to him. The Starless are apparently hungry for photons, and will do anything to eat more and more of them. After destroying the original anti-Starless fight force, they withdrew. They apparently wanted arcs to grow again, since that would give them a much better snack. Though, I feel I need to point out that Zephedo is not a reliable narrator at this point. He could be telling the truth, but he could also tell us what Veil wants us to believe. Personally, I believe there is more to the story than just yummy photons. Why wouldn't the Starless overwhelm us in the same way they did the original anti-Starless fight force? Why allow Zephedo to work on the 4th clone at all? Why are they letting us strengthen our defenses at all? Either they're cocky, or there is another reason. I believe what might have happened is that Veil actually lost his original body in that initial fight, like how Zephedo lost his body, and the 4th clone is his way of growing a new one. In that sense, they're not only waiting for arcs to grow to have a better snack, but also trying to regain their own strength, since the 4th clone was compromised. There are also still many holes in the timeline, and missing explanations. The Halpha experiment didn't start till 300 years ago, but we know that the original Starless attack happened 500 years ago. What happened during that 200-year gap? What exactly are the Starless anyway? Where do they come from? Why haven't they attacked sooner, and why do they bear a striking resemblance to Draconians? The only way I can explain the large gap in story updates is that the devs want us to replay the story of classic PSO2, in order to pick up on some clues. Why is Xiao such a doomer?
シオンという奇跡を手に入れたのは、闘争や犠牲の悲劇が繰り返されたのは、それが正しい運命だからだ。
Why is Kasra so on the money right now?
被験し、アークスに対して疑念を持つ輩も現れるでしょう。そもそもアークスとダーカーとの争いもフォトンが存在したためです。であればフォトンを兵器として扱うことを禁止するといった主張の勢力が生まれる可能性さえあります。そうなれば今のオラクルは分裂、いずれ争いに発展、そういった恐ろしい未来もあり得るかも。
Where are the Draconians?
同じ未来。この目があなたが中心となっている。
Lots of questions, and very few answers. Either way, one thing is for sure. Starless are attracted to photons, and as far as we're aware, arcs are the only species able to wield photons, so we won't have to seek Starless out, they will come to us, and it's up to us to strengthen our defenses, and prepare for any imminent threat. Now, let's stare at some walls. I wouldn't be thorough if I wasn't looking out for environmental storytelling. There are a lot of buildings in Nameless City, and some of them have stickers on them, indicating what kind of building they may have been. This building, for example, uses the medical sticker, indicating it's a medical facility. Interestingly enough, the transports of these facilities are identical to the transports we have on Halpha, just with a different paint job. This building has the school emblem, so it is likely a school for young arcs to learn and eventually join the war effort. This sticker, on the other hand, is new, and it is written in the NGS font rather than the PSO2 font. I believe this is the logo of Resurgent Arcs, and every building with that logo indicates one of their facilities. There are also monitors sprinkled throughout the city, showing this message. This house has Urban District Versatile Facility written on it, and a new logo beneath. Now, this logo is something to unpack. First of all, the icon itself looks very similar to a doll's Dark Falls core. I don't think this is a coincidence, considering what's written beneath it. Phantom Demon. This can be interpreted in a lot of ways. I believe this logo indicates what the division originally was, and what it eventually became. Starting out, they likely began developing dolls as either training or security mechanisms. But eventually they became the deadly enemies of Halcyon Arcs, most prominently in the form of Dark Falls. Also, the abbreviation is PD, which is commonly used with the Profound Darkness. Considering that Safeto was pretty much puppeteered by Veil, and Veil could be interpreted as the literal Phantom Demon, I think Veil is going to be on par with the Profound Darkness. There are more of these logos in the Research District, where alongside the PD logo we can also find another new logo. This one translates to ARC's Research and Development. Though keep in mind this doesn't refer to ARCs as in the species. The dots between the letters indicate that this district is likely focused on developing Helpha itself. The third district features these striking 7 tall buildings, and they're surrounded by a lot of fancy-looking houses. There are also a lot of parks, fountains, and flowers. I believe this might be the upper district where the wealthy live. I have no definitive answer on what these buildings represent, but I can guess. It's possible that resurgent arcs reverse their leadership back to a council of the 6 type structure, each having its own building dedicated to what they're ruling over, and the main building in the middle acting as a town hall of some sorts. I could be completely wrong on this, and I imagine we'll have a story update in the future exploring these structures. Also, look at this. Isn't this looking familiar? It's the water pump we saw in Halfia Lake. Speaking of which, remember Halfia Lake's unused combat theme? I wonder when that'll get used. Man, 3 years in, and Halpha still is full of mysteries. But that's all I've got for today. I really can't wait for February. If Dark Falls Veil is going to be as good of a boss fight as Dark Falls Aegis, then we're in for a treat. Until then, I'll be yapping about Tector and techniques. I'll see everyone in game. Take care!